My hands have always told the truth before my mouth ever did. Thick knuckles, crescent scars, skin stained by years of oil that never fully washes out. Those are my records, my diary entries. They've held a socket wrench under the hood of a sun-baked Chevy, coaxed seized bolts to give, and nursed dead engines back to a soft idle like lullabies for machines. I'm a mechanic by trade and by temperament. Fix what's broken, don't complain, get back to work. Those same hands built my daughter Lila, a square little treehouse behind our modest place in Spokane, Washington. Those hands cleaned her scraped knees, counted out coins in a coffee tin to make rent, and set aside every spare dollar so she could chase something bigger than I ever could. Routine was my religion. Up before the sun, coffee that tastes like a tire smells, the familiar clatter of the shop bay door rolling up. Lunch came out of a dented tin, meatloaf if it was a lucky week, peanut butter if it wasn't. Evenings ended in a cracked leather chair that squeaked like an old friend, the scent of engine cleaner stubborn on my shirt. My dream wasn't fancy. It was straight and narrow. Give Lila a shot at the kind of life that doesn't leave your back barking every time you stand up too fast. I wasn't trying to be anyone's hero. I was trying to be steady. Araku Renee, my wife, kept the poetry in that life. She could look at my busted-up knuckles and see the kindness, not the calluses. "Hector," she'd tell me, pressing a warm palm to my wrist, "these are a good man's hands. They build things that last." Her dreams weren't grand either. A little herb garden, a quiet porch swing, enough put away so we could age with dignity, and Lila's laughter close by. When cancer took Renee, the house didn't just get quiet. It went hollow. After the casseroles stopped showing up, and the neighbors moved on, I made myself a promise at that kitchen sink. Whatever it took, Lila would get every chance we never did. I sold Renee's cherry red Beetle, that little car she pampered like a pet, to cover Lila's first semester. It felt like I was selling a piece of sunlight. After that, the tuition came out of me. Double shifts, weekend rebuilds, overtime that blurred into dawn. My hands ached so bad some nights I could feel my pulse in the cuts, but pain is a language a mechanic understands. You listen, and you keep turning the wrench. When Lila was small, joy cost $1 and came on a stick. A popsicle could make her whole day glow, but somewhere in the middle school years, joy started coming with a brand name and a receipt. I still remember her at 14, asking for a designer backpack that cost more than our grocery bill. The look she gave me when I said no, that sting stayed longer than any scraped knuckle. I prayed it was a phase. She graduated with a business degree, moved into a world where conversations happen on golf courses, and married a man who grew up knowing the taste of imported chocolate. Ethan's father, Mr. Blackwell, owned more real estate than most people own socks and collected vintage cars like they were cereal box toys. He gave Lila a new car every Christmas, as if the year wasn't really finished until someone handed her keys with a bow on them. Meanwhile, I was the guy who quietly made sure first semester got paid. This past Father's Day, I hosted the family at my place. I grilled. I set out the good plates Renee bought at a yard sale. I made my mother's potato salad and her trick of sneaking in dill pickles for the kick. There were polite laughs, clinks of silver, and the kind of small talk that sits on the surface like oil on rainwater. "Dad, here's your gift." Lila said, sing-song bright the way you announce a surprise in a commercial. Her voice carries a sharp edge now, like a box cutter hidden under silk. She flicked a crumpled lottery ticket across my table, and it skidded to a stop against my plate. "If you win, remember half is mine." The room went a touch quieter. The ticket felt like $2 and a bruise. I smoothed it with my thumb. $2 used to be ice cream money and a smile from a kid with freckles. Now it was a punchline. "Very thoughtful, Mia," I said, "because I've learned sometimes love is swallowing things that don't go down easy." "Wait," she added, louder, looking past me to where Mr. Blackwell sat. Perfect posture. Shirt so crisp you could slice bread with it. "I haven't given Mr. Blackwell his gift yet." She produced a sleek, expensive-looking box from behind her chair. Ribbon that probably came with instructions. He leaned in, his eyes already approving. She lifted out 2 glossy tickets nestled in silk like a pair of doves. "A Mediterranean cruise," she announced, proud as a talk show host with a car under everyone's seat. 14 days, private balcony, first class everything. $13,000, because he always takes care of us. Mr. Blackwell fanned the tickets with the reverence of a man who's never had to count gas money. Now that, he said, is a proper gift. Then he looked straight at me. Hector, your daughter's got exquisite taste. Forks hovered. My sister Marina cleared her throat. My nephew Noah stared way too intently at the condensation on his water glass. Ethan rested an arm behind Lila's chair. And they shared a look. One of those looks people pass when they agree on the world and the rest of us are just visiting. Some people show love with grand gestures, Lila said, her laugh brittle and bright. She wiggled the lottery ticket with 2 fingers. Others keep it simple. I kept my face steady. I appreciate the thought. It's a joke, she said, dismissing it with a flick. But hey, if you hit the jackpot, I expect my half. High paid after all, Mr. Blackwell chuckled, deep and pleased. Maybe next year we'll see something more substantial from you, Hector. I nodded at the right times, murmured that the cruise sounded wonderful, and pretended my bones didn't feel hollow. The numbers on that ticket started to blur. $2 and a reminder that somewhere along the way, I turned from father to footnote. They left fast. Wealth moves efficiently. Doors shut, engines purred, voices drifted down the street. I stayed where I was, fingers resting on a raffle of hope and sarcasm. The sun slid off the table and left me in the comfortable dim of an old house that remembers better laughter. The next morning, the ticket lay by my coffee cup like a prank someone forgot to take back. I pulled up my bank statement on the old laptop I keep limping along out of spite. 40 years I've done this. First when every penny mattered just to keep the lights on, then later because habit keeps you honest. Utility bill, fuel, groceries for that Father's Day spread that didn't taste like celebration by the end. Then a line item blinked at me like it was in a foreign language. Premiere voyage, June 6th. I blinked back, expecting it to rearrange itself into something familiar. It didn't. The amount sat there like a dare, 13,000 and change. I checked the calendar, checked my memory. On June 6th I was at the shop, then home eating leftover chili and watching a game I can't even remember. My phone rang before the disbelief could even finish warming up. Unknown number. Mr. Ruiz, this is Daniel from First Cascade Bank, a calm voice said. We are calling about an unusual charge on your account. Online purchase, substantial amount listed as Premier Voyages. It's outside your normal spending pattern. Did you authorize that? The room tilted a little. No, I said, voice thin. I did not. There's a note, he continued carefully, that the card used is associated with an authorized user, one Lila Ruiz. We're prepared to initiate a dispute if... I didn't hear the end. The betrayal didn't feel dramatic. It felt administrative, like a form stamped denied across my chest. An entry on a ledger. I hung up and called Lila. Hello, Dad, she answered, distracted, as if my voice had interrupted an appointment she'd scheduled with someone more important. I'm looking at my bank statement, I said. There's a $13,000 charge to Premier Voyages. Silence. Then the kind of laugh that says she's already decided how this conversation ends. Oh, that. I bought Mr. Blackwell his cruise. He deserves something nice. You used my account, I said. I tried to keep my voice level. Without asking. I didn't take anything, she snapped. It's family money. And frankly, you weren't going to use it. Why are you even checking statements? I used to do that for you. That's theft, I said, and the word scraped coming out. You stole from me. It's not stealing when it's for family, she shot back. Mr. Blackwell has carried us for years, helped with the house, Milo's school, memberships we need. He's been more of a father than she didn't finish. She didn't have to. The last part hung there, heavy as a dropped wrench. I closed my eyes and saw a little girl in a treehouse waving down at me, with sticky hands and a grin that made my week. I opened them to the woman on the line who had learned to translate love into transactions. Lila, I said, soft but sure. I did my job. I worked, I sacrificed, I loved. You've confused my love with a ledger, and you've mistaken his transactions for generosity. The call ended in a clean click, like a door that had been closing for years finally reaching the frame. I put the phone down and walked to the trash can. The lottery ticket, her $2 joke, waited like a dare. Bought with my money, tossed at me like crumbs. I crumpled it until the paper squealed and dropped it onto the coffee grounds. It felt good for a second. Then the house felt too small, the air too stale. I grabbed my jacket and stepped out into a Spokane morning that didn't care about any of it. Lawnmowers started up. A kid on a scooter carved the sidewalk like he owned it. Mrs. Chang waved from her rose bushes. I waved back because some habits keep you human. I walked until my legs remembered they belonged to me. A text pinged. For a heartbeat, I let Hope sit in the doorway. "Talk to Mr. Blackwell," Lila wrote. "You're overreacting. You weren't using the money. We'll pay you back when we can, maybe around Christmas." I stared at the screen until the words lost their shapes. Then I deleted the message and kept moving. Some things once seen can't be unseen. I didn't have a fancy word for it. I just knew a line had been crossed, and somehow I'd been the one pushed. That night, my sister Marina called to check on me because gossip runs faster than grief. "Lila says you're being difficult," she said gently. "Says you're lonely and you don't understand how things work anymore." "I understand exactly how things work," I told her. My voice surprised me by not shaking. I just finally understand who they're working for. When I hung up, the house didn't feel hollow anymore. It felt like a place where decisions could be made. In the morning, I'd call the bank. I'd end the access I should have ended years ago. For that night, I sat with the ache and let it be real. The trash can held a coffee-stained lottery ticket. A joke, a slight, a tiny scrap of paper I wouldn't think about again. Or so I thought. The night after that call, I barely slept. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling fan blades as they sliced the dark, turning slow and steady like time that refused to hurry. I kept hearing Renee's voice in my head. "Hector, protect what you build. Don't let anyone tear it down." She never would have imagined the one tearing it down would be our own daughter. When dawn finally pushed grey light into the kitchen, I sat with a mug of coffee going cold, and the bank's number written on a torn envelope. My hands felt calmer than they had in weeks. I dialed, went through the menus, explained the situation. By the time I hung up, Lila's access was gone. The accounts were secure, new measures in place. I should have felt anger or grief or even victory. What I felt instead was relief, pure plain relief, like I'd finally boarded up a door against a storm that had been sneaking in for years. I tossed the envelope aside and glanced at the trash can. The lottery ticket was still there, crumpled among filters and eggshells. A joke, a jab, bought with my own money and handed to me like a bone tossed to a mutt. The irony stung deeper now that I knew how she'd paid for it. I pulled it out, smoothed the creases. Coffee stains blurred the edges, but the numbers were clear. 12, 19, 24, 36, 41, Powerball 10. Useless numbers, nothing more. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it, before I crushed it back into a ball and buried it deeper under the trash. That day, I tried to busy myself. I tinkered in the garage, reorganized the old tool chests, checked fluids in my rusty Dodge. But everything I touched seemed to echo with memories. Wrenches I'd used fixing Lila's first car, the sedan I restored with my own sweat. She had barely looked up from her phone when I handed her the keys. I tried to push the memory aside, but it stuck, sharp as a burr. Evening came heavy. I collapsed into my leather chair, the one Renee always teased me about never replacing. The TV remote felt like a lifeline, flipping channels without purpose. News, sitcom reruns, some cooking show where the host flambéed something no one in my neighborhood would ever eat. Then came the familiar jingle, the state lottery broadcast. I hovered, thumb over the button, ready to skip, but something in me lingered. "Good evening, Washington," the announcer said with his polished cheer. "Tonight's Powerball jackpot sits at $120 million. Let's see those numbers." I watched with half a mind, almost mocking myself for wasting seconds on it. Tonight's numbers: 12, 19, 24, 36, 41. Powerball 10. I froze. The remote slid from my hand and clattered onto the floor. I repeated the numbers under my breath. They weren't just familiar, they were exact. I stumbled into the kitchen, yanked the trash can toward me, and dug like a man desperate for oxygen. Coffee grounds smeared my hands, eggshells cracked under my nails. Finally, I pulled the ticket free, limp and stained but still legible. I rinsed it in the sink, smoothed it on a towel. There it was. Every single number matched. I sat down hard, the chair scraping the linoleum. My chest felt hollow, like the air had been punched out. The $2 joke, the insult tossed across my table, the slip of paper I'd nearly buried forever. It was worth more money than I could even picture. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at it, whispering the numbers again and again until I was sure it wasn't a hallucination. That night I didn't sleep. My mind spun with what-ifs. with Renee's voice, with images of Lila's smirk as she'd thrown me the ticket. I alternated between laughter and tears, between wanting to frame the thing and wanting to burn it. By dawn, I had only one decision. I had to know for sure. No guessing, no dreaming. I had to confirm it. The next morning, I drove into downtown Spokane. The Lottery Commission office stood taller than I expected, glass and steel reflecting grey clouds. Inside, everything smelled like carpet cleaner and official business. A woman named Julia met me at the counter, professional smile plastered on her face. "Mr. Ruiz?" she asked, glancing at the battered ticket I handed her inside a plastic sleeve. "Quite the condition here. May I ask what happened?" "I threw it away," I admitted. My voice felt strange in my throat. I thought it was worthless. My daughter, she bought it as a Father's Day gift, but I stopped myself. "It doesn't matter." Julia nodded, slid the ticket under a scanner, tapped keys with calm precision. "Well, Mr. Ruiz, the condition isn't ideal, but it's still readable and intact. And I'm happy to confirm, this ticket is a winner. The jackpot, congratulations." Her words seemed to echo through the room. A winner, the jackpot. $120 million. She explained the process. Lump sum versus annuity, taxes, paperwork, legal steps. I heard her, but the words swam. All I could think about was the coffee-stained slip of paper, the insult turned miracle. Driving home, the world looked the same, but felt like a costume. The corner grocery, the cracked sidewalks, Mrs. Chang's roses, they hadn't changed, but I had. The secret in my glove compartment made everything surreal. I wasn't Hector Ruiz, the worn-out mechanic, anymore. I was the man holding a fortune. I hadn't even been home an hour when the screech of tires tore through the quiet street. Lila's SUV skidded into my driveway, followed by a sleek black Mercedes I recognized as Ethan's. They got out fast, Lila already shouting before her heels hit the gravel. "What the hell did you do to my card?" she yelled. "It got declined at Nordstrom. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was?" I stood on the porch, arms crossed, the ticket heavy in my pocket. "I removed your access. After you stole $13,000. I didn't steal anything," she spat. "That was for family, for someone who actually deserves it." Ethan followed, calm in his expensive suit, his voice oiled smooth. "Hector, let's not blow this out of proportion. Sarah was just trying to give Mr. Blackwell a gift. It's not like you needed the money. You sit on it doing nothing. No return, no growth. It's wasted." "My return," I said, meeting his eyes, "is dignity, and you wouldn't know a thing about it." Lila stamped her foot like she was still 14. "He's been more of a father to me than you ever were. He gives us houses, schools, cars. You gave us what? Hand-me-downs and guilt?" "You're right," I said quietly. "It wasn't generosity. It was love. The kind that builds a life nail by nail, not the kind you buy with a check." "But you can't tell the difference anymore." Her face twisted with anger. "You don't understand anything. You're just a bitter old man who doesn't know how to live." I felt a smile spread, genuine and calm. "On the contrary, Lila, I finally understand. And you won't get a penny of my money. Not half, not a dollar. Every cent will go to people who truly need it. You'll see exactly how I live." Her eyes widened. "You what money?" she stammered, suspicion dawning. But I turned, went inside and shut the door. Her fists pounded on the wood for a while before the engines revved and silence returned. I leaned against the door, the ticket clutched in my hand. For the first time in years, my heart felt steady. I knew exactly what I was going to do. The silence after Lila's car tore away was the sweetest sound I'd heard in years. It wasn't just quiet, it was freedom. For once I wasn't the one left standing empty-handed. I had something no one could steal, no matter how hard they schemed. And the power of that realization lit something in me I hadn't felt since Renee was alive. Purpose. I sat at the kitchen table, with the ticket laid flat before me. Its creases were stubborn, coffee stains spidered the edges, but it held a truth worth more than all of Mr. Blackwell's cars combined. I thought about what people would do with $120 million. Buy yachts, build mansions, fly private. But none of that felt right for me. Renee's voice whispered in the quiet, "Simple joys, Hector. Build things that last." So that became my blueprint. Not revenge, not indulgence, legacy. Something she'd be proud of. The first call I made was to a financial advisor. A man named Douglas. came highly recommended by the Lottery Commission itself. He had a steady, measured way of speaking, like every word had been checked twice before leaving his lips. We met in a glass office downtown overlooking the river. He wore a navy suit, his cufflinks catching the light. "Mr. Ruiz," he said, offering a handshake, "your story is extraordinary. A coffee-stained ticket worth $120 million. I'll be honest, I've never had a client walk in with anything like it. I don't want to be another headline about a winner who goes broke," I told him. "I want this money to matter. To last," he nodded approvingly. "That mindset alone puts you ahead of 90% of lottery winners. First, we'll secure it legally. Trusts, tax strategy, protection from opportunists." I thought of Lila and Ethan, of Mr. Blackwell's smirk, and gave a humorless laugh. "Opportunists I've got plenty of. Then we'll discuss allocations," Douglas continued. "Investments, philanthropy, your own comfort. But tell me, Hector, what do you want?" The answer was immediate. I want kids who grew up like mine, like Lila once was, to have a shot at school without their fathers breaking their backs to pay for it. I want families like my sister's to breathe easy for once. And I want to honor my wife's name. Douglas smiled faintly. "Then we'll make that happen." The Mabel Scholarship Fund was born 2 weeks later. The paperwork was thick, the signatures many. But when the bronze plaque was unveiled at Eastern Washington University, I felt Renee's presence as real as if she were standing beside me. Her name gleamed in the sunlight, etched into permanence, the Mabel Ruiz Scholarship, for students of resilience. Preference went to kids who had lost a parent, because I knew the hollow that grief leaves and how heavy the world feels after. The first recipient was a girl named Clara, studying engineering. When I met her, she reminded me of Renee, her dark eyes clear and steady, her voice soft but certain. "Mr. Ruiz," she said, trembling slightly, "I was going to drop out this semester. My mom works 2 jobs. We couldn't keep up. This changes everything." Her gratitude washed over me like balm. No cruise ticket, no car, no country club membership could ever equal that moment. That was wealth. From there I went to see my sister Marina. She'd lived in a rental her entire life, walls patched with tape, leaky faucets singing her to sleep. I showed up one Saturday morning with a folder. Inside was the deed to a brand new house on the edge of town. 3 bedrooms, a porch swing, a garden plot out back. Paid in cash. She opened the folder, blinked, and then her hands started to shake. "Hector," she whispered, "what is this?" "It's yours," I said simply. "No more rent. No more landlords raising the price. A place that's truly home." She covered her mouth and began to cry, soft at first, then harder. "Where did you... how..." I smiled. "A gift. One that finally means something." My nephew Noah was next. He was a painter, talented but drowning in student loans. He'd been on the verge of giving it all up to take a job in sales, the kind that eats your soul one phone call at a time. I met him at his cramped studio, canvases stacked against the walls. He looked at me with tired eyes. "You're debt-free," I told him, handing him a letter from the bank. "Go paint. Go live the life you've been fighting for." He dropped onto a stool, stunned, then pulled me into a hug so tight I nearly lost my breath. "Uncle Hector," he choked, "you just gave me my future back." His wife Lena called me later, crying into the phone. "You saved him. You saved us." I didn't stop there. My younger nephew, Mateo, had just started his first job, commuting an hour each way in a car that rattled like a coffee can full of bolts. I bought him a reliable truck. Nothing flashy, just something solid and safe. The look on his face when I handed him the keys reminded me of Lila when she was small, back when joy didn't come with a price tag. That memory stung, but it also healed something. Mrs. Chang, my neighbor who had always waved to me from her rose garden, became another stop. She was widowed, living in a house with a roof that leaked and floors that creaked dangerously. I arranged for a full renovation, top to bottom, all expenses covered. When she came home to find her place sparkling new, she clutched my hands and said, "I can live here safely until my last breath. Bless you, Hector." And late at night I made anonymous payments on mortgages for families in my neighborhood. People who had helped me, shared casseroles when Renee died, or simply treated me with dignity. They never knew who did it. I didn't need them to. Their relief was enough. Through it all, the ticket remained a symbol, not of luck, not of greed, but of transformation. The very thing that had been meant as an insult had become my salvation. Every time I saw its stained surface in the plastic sleeve Douglas had given me, I smiled. I wasn't bitter anymore. I was building. One afternoon, as I stood on the porch of Marina's new home, watching her grandchildren race across the backyard, I realized something. The house didn't feel small anymore. My life didn't feel shabby. For the first time since Renee's death, it felt like a home again. And I whispered to the air, "Happy Father's Day, Renee. We did it." News travels faster than wildfire when money is involved. I tried to keep things quiet. No interviews, no flashing headlines. But word has a way of seeping through cracks. The bank knew. The Lottery Commission employees knew. And it only takes one whisper in the wrong ear before everyone knows. 2 weeks after setting up the Mabel Scholarship Fund, I heard the sound I dreaded most, the crunch of Lila's SUV pulling into my driveway. I looked out the window and sure enough behind her came the sleek black Mercedes. Mr. Blackwell himself stepped out this time, his posture as stiff as ever, the air around him thick with self-importance. Ethan trailed beside him, phone in hand, looking more assistant than husband. Lila stormed toward the porch, her heels clacking against the concrete like a countdown to trouble. "Dad!" she shouted, her face already red. "What's this I hear about scholarships and donations? Is it true?" I stepped out, leaning against the doorframe. "Yes, it's true. I've put the money to good use." Her eyes narrowed, darting past me toward the living room where she could just make out the framed certificate from the university. "You're giving it away? To strangers?" "Not strangers," I said calmly. "Students, families, people who need it." Mr. Blackwell climbed the steps slowly, like a king entering a court. His cologne hit before his words did. "Hector," he said smoothly, "let's be reasonable. 120 million is no small sum. That kind of money requires management, experience, connections. If you're not careful, you'll squander it on sentimentality." "I'm managing just fine," I replied. He gave a thin smile. "I'm offering you my expertise. Investments, properties, tax shelters. You could triple your fortune in a few years." He spread his manicured hands. "And, of course, keep your family in the lifestyle they deserve." Ethan chimed in quickly, as though rehearsed. "Dad, Mr. Blackwell's right. We could all benefit. Think of Milo's future. Private school, college abroad, opportunities money can buy." I looked at my grandson's name hanging in the air like bait. Milo, 10 years old, quiet, curious. A boy who still waved shyly when I visited, who hadn't yet learned to measure people by bank accounts. My chest tightened. "Funny," I said. "I've been thinking of Milo's future, and I've decided the best way to secure it is to make sure he knows what integrity looks like." Lila's voice sharpened, slicing through the porch air. "Don't you dare preach to me. You think throwing money at nobodies makes you noble? It makes you a fool. We are your family. We deserve this, not some random kid named Clara or whatever." Her words struck like a hammer. Clara's face flashed in my mind, eyes wet with gratitude. I thought of Marina crying in her new kitchen, of Mrs. Chang hugging me with her small, tired arms. Nobodies, no, they were people. Real people. And they had shown me more love in 2 weeks than my own daughter had in years. I straightened up. "You had your chance, Lila. For years you had it. I gave you everything I could, time, work, sacrifice. You chose to see it as not enough. Now this money, it's not for you." "Not one penny." Her jaw dropped. "You can't mean that." "I do." Mr. Blackwell's voice dropped lower, carrying the weight of threat. "Be careful, Hector. Families fracture over money. Lawsuits happen. Power shifts. Are you prepared for that?" I met his gaze without blinking. "I've spent my life fixing what's broken. If my family breaks over greed, then it was cracked long before this." The words hung heavy. Lila trembled, her hands balled into fists. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "You're cutting yourself off from us forever." "No," I said softly. "You did that the day you stole from me and called it family money." They left in a flurry of slammed car doors and screeching tires. I stood there a long time after, listening to the quiet fill back in, the air settling like dust after a storm. That night I sat in my chair with the ticket in its plastic sleeve propped against a lamp. For the first time I didn't see bitterness when I looked at it. I saw freedom. I thought of the people I could still help. A community center for kids on the east side of town, a fund for veterans trying to restart their lives, maybe even a program to teach trades, mechanics, carpentry, welding. For kids who weren't meant for college but deserved a future. Renee's voice whispered again, steady as ever. Build things that last, and I smiled, because I finally understood. A week later, Marina called me. Hector, she said cautiously, Lila's been talking. She says you're unstable, that you're throwing your money away and she's trying to stop you from ruining yourself. I chuckled. Of course she is. She's talking about lawyers, Marina added quietly. I thought you should know. I leaned back unafraid. Let her talk. Let her sue. I've already put most of the money where it can't be touched. Scholarships, trusts, charities. Even if she drags me through every courtroom in this state, she'll come up empty. Marina sighed. You really mean it, don't you? She won't see a dime? Not a dime, I said, because the truth is she doesn't need the money. What she needs I can't give her anymore. That weekend I drove out to the university, where Clara had just moved into the dorms. She met me on the lawn, books in her arms, her smile hesitant but real. Mr. Ruiz, she said, I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to, I told her. Just do the work. Build something that lasts. That'll be thanks enough. She nodded, her eyes shining. And in that moment, I felt lighter than I had in decades. Back home, the house felt different. Not smaller, not hollow, but alive again. As if Renee's laughter still lived in the walls. As if the love I'd thought lost had returned. Multiplied through every life touched by that coffee-stained ticket. And I knew I hadn't lost my daughter completely. I'd just learned where my true family was. The first letter came on a Tuesday, tucked into my mailbox between an electric bill and a flyer for half-off pizza. Thick envelope, heavy paper, the kind lawyers use when they want to remind you they charge by the hour. Mr. Ruiz, it began in sharp black print. We are writing on behalf of your daughter, Mrs. Lila Blackwell, regarding her rightful interest in the recent lottery winnings. I didn't finish the rest. I didn't have to. The words blurred into one simple message. She was suing me. I set the letter on the counter, made myself a cup of coffee, and let the smell of roasted beans cut through the tightness in my chest. For a moment I just stared at the steam curling upward, remembering how Renee always said coffee was courage in a cup. Then I called Douglas, my advisor. They've come for it, I said, sliding into the chair at my kitchen table. Expected, he replied calmly. Don't worry, Hector. The money's secured in trusts and charitable foundations. She'll have no legal standing. She'll try anyway, I muttered. Douglas paused. Then let her. Sometimes people need to exhaust themselves against a wall before they realize it won't move. But letters weren't the only thing. The next week, I went to the grocery store. People stared a little longer than usual. Whispers floated behind me in the aisles. By the time I reached the checkout, the clerk, normally cheerful, kept her smile tight, her eyes flicking away from mine. I found out why the next morning. On the front page of the local paper, lottery winner estranged from daughter amid allegations of instability. There it was in bold. My name, my face, a photo lifted from the university's scholarship announcement, paired with quotes from sources close to the family. Words like paranoid, reckless, unfit to manage his own affairs. I didn't need to guess who the source was. I folded the paper slowly, placed it in the drawer where I kept old birthday cards from Lila when she was little. Back when her handwriting was round and clumsy, and her messages always ended with too many hearts. 2 days later, Marina showed up at my door. She had that look, worried like she wanted to help but wasn't sure how. She's talking to everyone, Hector, she said softly. Church friends, neighbors. She says you've lost your mind, that you're giving everything away to buy strangers' love. I shrugged, though the words stung. If giving kids a chance at college is madness, then maybe I am. Marina sighed, gripping my hand. I just don't want you alone in this. I squeezed back. I'm not alone. Not anymore, and I meant it. Because for every whisper Lila spread, I saw a smile from someone I'd helped. Clara sending me her first exam grade. Noah showing me a canvas glowing with color. Mrs. Chang waving from her repaired porch, her roses blooming brighter than ever. That was proof enough that I wasn't crazy. Still, the pressure built. One afternoon, I pulled into my driveway to find a local reporter waiting, microphone in hand. Mr. Ruiz, care to comment on your daughter's claims that you're squandering the money? I walked past him without slowing, the gravel crunching under my boots. No comment. Do you deny that you've cut your family off completely? He pressed. I stopped, turned. I've cut no one off, But I won't let greed dictate love. That line ended up in the paper the next day, headline bold and clear, and to my surprise, people noticed. At the diner, an older man clapped me on the shoulder. Good words, Hector. World could use more of that. It didn't erase the sting of Lila's betrayal, but it steadied me. One evening, as the sun bled gold across Spokane, I found myself on the porch with the lottery ticket again. Still stained, still creased, tucked safe in its sleeve. I traced the numbers with my thumb. This was never meant to be about wealth. Not yachts or status or magazine spreads. It was about meaning. Renee's voice came back steady and certain. Build things that last, I whispered into the fading light. I hear you, mi amor. I'm building. Then came the phone call. Dad, Lila's voice snapped, brittle as glass. You've humiliated me. Do you know what people are saying? That I'm greedy, that I'm heartless. I closed my eyes. I didn't say those things, Lila. Your actions did. You're ruining everything. She shouted. Give me what's mine, or I'll drag you through court until you're broke. I almost laughed at the irony. You can't take what I've already given away. There was silence, then a hiss of breath. You'll regret this. She hung up before I could answer. That night I sat at the kitchen table with a notepad. I wrote down ideas, plans, dreams. More scholarships, a community center, a trade school named after Renee. The list grew until the page was crowded, each line a piece of legacy. The lawsuit, the gossip, the threats, they were noise. This was the music, and for the first time in months I slept soundly. The lawsuit hit the courts by early autumn. By then the leaves in Spokane had begun their slow turn from green to fire, and every gust of wind seemed to scatter reminders that nothing stays the same forever. I showed up to the courthouse in my one good suit, the same one I'd worn to Lila's wedding, back when she'd called me her hero in front of 100 guests. It felt looser now, like time had stretched it, but I wore it anyway. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and old paper. Lila sat across the aisle, wrapped in a navy blazer that screamed money, her hair pinned neat and sharp. Ethan was beside her, scrolling his phone, and Mr. Blackwell sat behind them like a general watching his soldiers march. Their lawyer, a slick man named Davenport, wasted no time. Your Honor, he began smoothly, we contend that Mrs. Blackwell is entitled to a share of Mr. Ruiz's lottery winnings. The ticket was purchased with funds from his account, funds Mrs. Blackwell had long-standing access to. This creates both a legal and moral claim. I sat quiet, my lawyer, a calm woman named Patrice resting a hand on my arm. We'll handle it, she whispered. Patrice stood, her voice steady as a wrench turning in a sure hand. Your Honor, let's be clear. Mrs. Blackwell did not buy this ticket out of generosity. She used funds without permission, disguised the purchase as a gift, then mocked Mr. Ruiz by demanding half if he won. That is not generosity. That is theft. And now she demands entitlement to winnings she never valued in the first place. Davenport smirked, as if expecting that line. Family money, Your Honor. Shared accounts, shared responsibilities. But the judge, a silver-haired woman with stern eyes, lifted a hand. Mr. Davenport will examine legal access. But morality aside, if these were Mr. Ruiz's funds used without explicit permission, that complicates your argument. Lila shifted in her chair, her cheeks flushed. I thought I saw the faintest crack in her confidence. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Microphones thrust forward, cameras blinking. I kept walking, but Patrice spoke firmly into the crowd. My client intends to continue supporting scholarships, community programs, and families in need. That is where his winnings are going, not to fund greed. Those words landed like sparks. By the next morning, the newspaper carried a new headline. Mechanic-turned-philanthropist defends his legacy. And suddenly, the whispers in grocery aisles changed tone. The support came first in small waves. A thank you card slid under my door, written in a shaky hand. Thank you for paying off my mortgage. I can breathe again, no name. Just gratitude. Then Clara posted online about the scholarship, calling me her guardian angel. Her words spread, shared and reshared, until strangers I'd never met sent letters, kids who dreamed of college, parents working 2 jobs, neighbors from towns I'd never heard of. And one chilly evening, as I left the courthouse after another hearing, I saw them. 24 people standing on the steps holding signs that read, "Thank you. Hector, build things that last. We stand with you." For a moment I froze. I wasn't used to crowds, but when a young boy stepped forward, clutching his mother's hand, and said, "Mister, you paid for my mum's medicine," something inside me cracked open. My throat burned, my eyes blurred. All I could manage was a nod. Lila, walking out just behind me, saw it too. The crowd didn't cheer her name. No one lifted a sign for her. She hurried past, her jaw tight, her heels clicking like gunshots on stone. The next week, Patrice pulled me aside in the hallway. "She's losing ground. Public opinion matters more than Davenport will admit. Keep steady, Hector. Don't engage her anger. Just keep doing what you're doing." So I did. I signed papers for a new community center on the east side of Spokane, a place where kids could learn carpentry, plumbing, mechanics, skills that had carried me my whole life. I wrote checks to a veterans shelter that had been one rent hike away from closing. I visited Marina's house on Sundays, eating her tamales on the porch swing I'd bought her. Each act was a nail driven into something stronger than greed, legacy. But not all was calm. One evening, as I was locking up the garage, a car rolled slow down the street. The window lowered and Lila's voice called out, "Dad!" She barked, her tone sharp. "You're humiliating me. You think strangers care more about you than your own daughter." I turned, hands steady on the lock. "I don't think it, Lila, I know it." Her face twisted, her knuckles white on the wheel. "You'll regret this. When you're old and alone, you'll wish you'd listened." I stepped forward into the porch light. I'd rather be alone with dignity than surrounded by greed. Her engine revved. Tires screeched and she vanished into the night. That night, I sat again with the ticket, laid flat on the table in its plastic sleeve. I thought of Renee, of her words, of the garden she'd always wanted. And I realized something. I wasn't alone. I had built a family again, just not by blood, by choice, by action, by love that didn't come with receipts. And no lawsuit, no smear campaign, no threats could change that. The day of testimony came with skies heavy and grey, the kind of weather that seemed to mirror the weight sitting on my shoulders. I pulled on the same suit, tied the same plain tie, and reminded myself that dignity never goes out of style, no matter how wrinkled. Inside the courthouse, the air hummed with tension. Lila sat across the aisle, her lips pressed into a line so thin it could have cut glass. Ethan whispered in her ear, while Mr. Blackwell reclined behind them like a man watching a chess game he was sure he'd already won. When the bailiff called my name, I walked to the stand. My palms were damp, but my back was straight. I took the oath, sat down, and looked at the judge. Steady, unsmiling, waiting. Davenport, their lawyer, approached first. He adjusted his cufflinks, his grin sharp. "Mr. Ruiz," he began, "you admit your daughter purchased the winning ticket?" "She used my money," I said evenly. "But she physically bought it, correct?" "Yes," I said, "without permission." He nodded as though I'd just confirmed his point. "So by your own admission, Mrs. Blackwell acquired the ticket. Doesn't that suggest she has a rightful claim to the winnings?" I leaned forward, my voice low but firm. "Counselor, if someone breaks into your wallet and buys a sandwich, does that make the sandwich theirs? Or did they steal it?" A ripple of laughter spread through the gallery. Davenport's smirk faltered. He tried again. "But surely, as her father, you gave her access with the understanding she could use the funds for family purposes." I met his eyes. "Access is not ownership. Trust is not a blank check, and theft dressed up as family duty is still theft." The judge's eyebrows lifted slightly, but she said nothing. Davenport clicked his pen, frustrated, and stepped back. Patrice rose, her tone gentle. "Mr. Ruiz, could you tell the court why you've chosen to use the money as you have?" I swallowed, glancing toward the gallery where a few familiar faces sat. Marina, Noah, even Clara. Their eyes gave me strength. "I worked 40 years as a mechanic," I said. "Every bolt turned, every transmission rebuilt, every ache in my hands, it was all for my daughter, to give her a life better than mine. And I did it gladly. But somewhere along the way, she decided love wasn't enough unless it came with a price tag. When this ticket won, I could have hoarded it. I could have tried to buy back her affection, but that wouldn't be love, it'd be bribery. So I chose to do what my wife Renee always told me. Build things that last. I've built scholarships for kids who need a chance. Houses for families who need a roof. A community center for kids who don't have anywhere else to go. That's where the money belongs, not in the pockets of those who mistake greed for gratitude." My voice caught, but I didn't stop. This ticket may have been handed to me as a joke, but I refused to let it end as one. When I finished, the room was silent except for the scratch of the judge's pen. During recess, I stepped into the hallway. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashing. But before they could pepper me with questions, Clara hurried up, clutching her books. "You were amazing," she said breathlessly. "You said what everyone wanted to hear." I smiled faintly. "I just told the truth." Behind her, Marina gave me a nod, eyes shining, and Noah squeezed my shoulder. "You're not fighting alone, Uncle. Remember that." Their support steadied me more than any lawyer ever could. The next day, it was Lila's turn. She walked to the stand, chin high, her heels clicking sharp against the floor. "Mrs. Blackwell," Davenport prompted, "why do you believe you deserve a share of your father's winnings?" She didn't hesitate. "Because I bought the ticket." "Because family is supposed to share." "Because I've always managed his money, and without me, he wouldn't even know how to keep a bank account in order. And because Mr. Blackwell has supported us when my father couldn't. It's only fair he finally gives something back." Her words stung. But what hurt most wasn't the accusation. It was the emptiness in her voice. No warmth, no memory, no trace of the girl who once made me construction paper cards with glue smudges and crooked hearts. When Patrice cross-examined, she kept her tone calm. "Mrs. Blackwell, did your father ever explicitly tell you to use $13,000 from his account to purchase a cruise for your father-in-law?" Lila hesitated just for a second. "No, but I didn't think I needed to." "And when you gave him the lottery ticket," Patrice pressed, "did you treat it as a meaningful gift or a joke?" Lila's mouth opened, then closed. The courtroom waited. Finally, she muttered, "It was light-hearted." "Light-hearted," Patrice repeated softly. "Thank you." The damage was done. By the end of the week, it was clear which way the tide was turning. The judge had yet to rule, but Davenport's swagger had wilted. Lila avoided my eyes, her fury simmering just beneath the surface, and I, for the first time in months, felt peace creeping back into my bones. That night, sitting on my porch under a sky littered with stars, I whispered into the cool air, "We're almost there. Renee, almost." Because win or lose, money or no money, I knew the truth. I had already won. The verdict came on a crisp Friday morning. The courthouse was quieter than usual, as though everyone knew the weight of what was about to be said. I sat at the defendant's table, my hands folded loosely on the wood, calm in a way I hadn't been since Renee's passing. Across the aisle, Lila sat rigid, her eyes darting between the judge and Mr. Blackwell, who whispered something in her ear every few minutes, like a coach giving last-minute plays. The judge entered, her robe sweeping as she took her seat. She scanned the room with eyes that could silence an army. "This case," she began, "has touched on more than money. It has touched on family, trust, and responsibility. But the matter before me is simple. Does Mrs. Blackwell have a legal claim to these lottery winnings?" Lila leaned forward, hopeful. Davenport's smirk returned, thin but certain. The judge continued. "After reviewing evidence and testimony, I find that the ticket was purchased using Mr. Ruiz's funds without explicit permission. That makes the purchase unauthorized. Furthermore, Mrs. Blackwell herself admitted the gift was given in jest, not in good faith. Therefore, she has no legal entitlement to the winnings." A murmur spread through the courtroom. Lila's face fell, her hands tightening into fists. Mr. Blackwell's jaw hardened, but he remained still, as though frozen by disbelief. The judge's gavel struck once, sharp as a gunshot. Case dismissed. The air outside the courthouse felt lighter, fresher, as though the clouds had finally given way to sun. Reporters rushed forward, but Patrice stepped in front of me. "No comment today," she said firmly, guiding me toward the car. I didn't resist. I didn't need words. The gavel had spoken enough. Still, as we pulled away, I glanced back at the steps. Lila stood there, her arms crossed, her face pale with fury. Ethan hovered at her side, but even he looked shaken. For a fleeting second, our eyes met. Hers were full of betrayal, but not the kind I expected. She looked at me not as if I'd abandoned her, but as if I'd embarrassed her. And in that moment, I realized the gap between us wasn't money. It was values. Back home, Marina and Noah waited on the porch with wide smiles and open arms. "You did it," Marina whispered as she hugged me. "You held your ground." "No," I corrected softly, glancing at the plastic sleeve holding the ticket on my mantle. We did it. All of us. That evening, my phone buzzed non-stop. Texts from neighbors, messages from the university, even a call from the veterans' shelter. Gratitude poured in like a tide. One message stood out. "Mr. Ruiz, because of you, I don't have to drop out of nursing school. Someday I'll be able to save lives. Thank you." I read it 3 times, each word a balm against the sting of Lila's absence. But the night wasn't without shadows. Near midnight, as I sat in my chair sipping coffee gone cold, the phone rang again. Lila's name flashed on the screen. I answered, my chest tight. "Hello?" Her voice was low, edged with venom. "You've ruined me. Do you know how I look now? People call me greedy. They laugh. They pity me. And it's all because of you." "Lila," I said carefully, "you did that yourself." "I only told the truth. You think you've won," she hissed. "Enjoy it while it lasts. You'll die alone, Dad. And when you do, all those strangers you care so much about, they won't be there to hold your hand." The line clicked dead. I set the phone down, my heart heavy but steady. Her words were meant to wound, but instead, they only clarified what I already knew. I had lost my daughter long before the ticket. The next morning, I stood in my backyard, looking at the spot where Renee's garden once grew wild with tomatoes and basil. I decided then that I'd rebuild it, bigger, brighter, a community garden, open to neighbors, tended by the kids at the new center. Something that would outlast gossip, court cases, and bitterness. I knelt, pressing my hand into the soil. Warm, damp, full of promise. Renee's voice drifted back again. "Build things that last," and I whispered into the earth, "I'm still building, love. Always will." That weekend I attended the opening of the community center. The building wasn't fancy. Brick walls, wide windows, the faint smell of new paint, but it hummed with life. Kids ran between rooms, exploring woodworking tools, computer labs, art supplies. Parents stood at the edges, some with tears in their eyes. Clara spotted me near the entrance and rushed over. "Mr. Ruiz, you have to see the library. It's incredible." She tugged me inside, past shelves lined with donated books, past tables already filled with kids drawing and writing. On the wall, painted in bold letters, were the words, "In memory of Renee Ruiz, build things that last." I stopped, my throat tight. The room blurred, and I had to blink hard to steady myself. This was it. This was legacy. That night, sitting on my porch, I realized something simple but profound. I hadn't just won a lawsuit. I hadn't just given money away. I'd reclaimed my life. The house no longer felt too small. My days no longer felt hollow. And though Lila's absence still ached like a missing limb, I had found something stronger. A family made of gratitude, kindness, and resilience. The ticket, once crumpled in the trash, had become more than paper. It was a reminder that even the smallest joke can spark the greatest change. Winter crept into Spokane, wrapping the town in its sharp breath. The mornings were frosted silver, and my old Dodge groaned louder than usual when I started it. But inside me there was warmth, a steadiness I hadn't felt in years. The scholarship fund had already awarded its second round. The community center bustled with kids learning trades, their laughter bouncing against the brick walls. The garden plot behind my house, once Renee's, had been turned over and planted with winter greens under the care of local volunteers. Every corner of my life now whispered her words back to me. Build things that last. But even in the glow of purpose, shadows still reached. It started with phone calls, unknown numbers lighting up my phone late at night. I ignored them at first, figuring they were reporters fishing for a new headline. But one evening, after a long day of meetings with the university board, I picked up. "Dad." The word cracked through the line. "Lila." Her voice was hoarse, brittle. "What is it, Lila?" I asked quietly. There was silence, then a sob. I made a mistake." I gripped the phone tighter. "Which one are you talking about?" "All of it," she whispered. "The lawsuit. The things I said. The papers are calling me greedy. Even Ethan, he's furious. Mr. Blackwell won't return my calls. Everything's falling apart." Her words poured out in a flood. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was protecting what was mine. But I lost everything. Dad, please, I need help." For a long moment I said nothing. My chest was a battlefield, half of me aching for the little girl who once clung to my leg at the park, the other half scarred by the woman who had spat venom in my face. Finally I asked, Do you need money, Lila? Or do you need forgiveness? Her breath hitched. Both, she admitted, so soft I barely heard. The next day she came to my house. She stood on the porch bundled in an expensive coat, her makeup streaked with tears. For the first time in years she looked smaller, fragile. "Dad," she said, her voice trembling, "can we start over?" I studied her carefully. "Start over how?" "No lawyers. No fights, just family again." Behind her words, though, I saw it. The flicker in her eyes, the way they darted toward the mantel where the lottery ticket sat framed. Regret or hunger? Maybe both. I opened the door wider, motioned her inside. "Sit down." She perched on the edge of the sofa, her hands twisting in her lap. "I've been so angry," she said. "I let greed blind me. I thought Mr. Blackwell cared about me, but once the money was gone, so was his support. I see now what you've been doing with it. The scholarships, the center. People respect you, Dad. They love you." Her voice cracked. "I want to be part of that. I want to make you proud again." For a moment, hope flickered. Maybe this was real. Maybe she'd finally seen through the glitter and grasped what truly mattered. But then she added, almost too casually, "If you could just set aside a portion for me, something to help me get back on my feet, I could join you in those projects. We could do it together." There it was, the hook beneath the words. I leaned back, letting out a long breath. "Lila," I said gently, "you don't need my money to be part of this. You just need your heart. You want to help, volunteer at the center, tutor a kid, plant in the garden, but don't ask me for a penny." "Not one." Her face hardened. The tears dried into anger again. "So that's it? After everything, you're still shutting me out?" I shook my head. "No, I'm leaving the door open for you. Not for your greed. When you're ready to walk through it empty-handed, you'll find me here." She stood abruptly, her chair scraping the floor. For a second, I thought she might yell, but instead she bit her lip, turned and left without another word. I watched from the window as her SUV pulled away. The taillights vanished into the snowy night, and I wondered if I'd ever see her again. Later that week, Clara came by the house to show me her latest project, a model bridge she'd built for her engineering class. As she explained the structure, her eyes shone with excitement. "You see, Mr. Ruiz," she said, "a bridge isn't about beauty. It's about strength, about carrying people safely across." I smiled at her words, feeling Renee's presence stronger than ever. "That's all we're doing, Clara. Building bridges, carrying people across." That night I sat at my kitchen table with a fresh cup of coffee, watching the snow drift outside. Lila's visit still tugged at me, her words echoing. But as I looked around, the scholarship plaques, the drawings from kids at the center pinned to my fridge, the framed photo of Renee smiling in her garden, I knew my answer was right. Love can't be bought. Legacy can't be bribed, and some bridges, no matter how badly you want them, can't be built until both sides meet in the middle. Spring arrived in Spokane with soft rain and the smell of earth waking up. The garden out back had come alive again. Rows of lettuce, beans curling toward trellises, tomato seedlings pushing through the soil. Every time I walked among the beds, I could almost hear Renee humming. She'd always said gardens were proof that patience pays. The community center had become the heartbeat of the neighborhood. Kids who once lingered on corners now built birdhouses in the carpentry room, soldered circuits in the workshop, or painted murals that spilled color across brick walls. Their parents came too, attending evening classes on budgeting, job training, even cooking. It was noisy, messy, and alive in a way that reminded me of the garage on its busiest days. I'd stop by often, leaning against the doorframe, listening to the buzz of voices. And each time someone would wave, call out, "Thank you, Mr. Ruiz." But the truth was I wasn't doing this for thanks. I was doing it because it felt right. Because I finally understood what Renee had meant. Build things that last. Lila hadn't called again. Weeks had passed since her visit, and though part of me still longed for her to walk through that door empty-handed, I'd stopped holding my breath. Some wounds take years to heal. Some may never. I'd learned not to chase what refused to be caught. Instead, I poured myself into the projects. More scholarships. More renovations for neighbors on the edge of losing their homes. A food pantry at the community center. Slowly, the money transformed, not into luxury but into lifelines. And with each check signed, each project launched, I felt lighter. One evening, Marina came over with a pot of her tamales. We sat on the porch swing of her new house, watching her grandkids chase fireflies. "You know," she said, "people in town call you a miracle." I chuckled. "Miracles don't come in coffee-stained tickets. They come in what you do with them," she countered. "You've turned bitterness into blessing." "That's rare, Hector." Her words settled deep in me. I didn't argue. The garden reached its full bloom by June. On the anniversary of Renee's passing, I invited the scholarship students, the neighbors I'd helped, the kids from the center. They all gathered in the yard, laughter spilling out into the evening. Clara spoke first, standing near the garden rose. "Mr. Ruiz gave me more than money," she said. "He gave me a chance to believe in myself. That's worth more than any check." Others spoke too. Noah about his art, Mrs. Chang about her renovated home, a veteran about finally having a safe bed to sleep in. Each story wrapped around me like a quilt, stitching together the broken pieces of my life. When they finished, I walked to the center of the garden and held up the framed lottery ticket. The crowd grew quiet. "This," I said, "it was once a joke. Something meant to belittle me. But life has a way of turning insults into opportunities, trash into treasure. This ticket doesn't mean wealth. It means possibility. And every one of you standing here is proof that possibility matters more than greed." The applause that followed was thunderous, but I barely heard it. All I heard was Renee's voice in the wind. "Build things that last." That night, when the house had emptied and the dishes were stacked in the sink, I sat in my leather chair, the same one that had once felt too big for one man. Now it felt just right. I looked around at the photos on the walls, the letters from students pinned to the fridge, the garden glowing faintly under the moonlight. I wasn't rich because of the money. I was rich because I had finally learned what to do with it. And though my daughter's seat at the table remained empty, the house was no longer hollow. It was full of voices, laughter, and a legacy that would outlive me. I leaned back, closed my eyes and whispered to the night, "Happy Father's Day, Renee. I built something that will last." The house was quiet, but for the first time in a long time, the silence felt like peace.